Hello everyone, and welcome to another Skype session. It's just going to be me today. Matt and Andrew couldn't make it, so I just wanted to share a few thoughts on the letter that they talked about this week. And if I sound a little strange, it's because I have a cap on my front tooth, and it decided to come off as I was eating a taco yesterday, which means that I look a little bit like a pirate, and I have a little bit of a speech impediment now. But let's press on. Letter 3, we call it Mamma Mia, because Screwtape is talking about how to sabotage the patient's relationship with his mother, and how that relationship can be used to lead the patient to hell. And the first thing I really wanted to say about this letter is, it's not just about mothers. It can very easily be about spouses and siblings, really anybody that you live with. I'm now 40, and I've spent most of my life doing house shares and flat shares and apartment sharing. And if there's one thing that can drive you to the confessional, it's living with other people. They can either make you very heavenly or very hellish. And this ties in with that whole idea of heavenly and hellish creatures that we keep going on about. It's the small little things day in, day out that slowly form who you are, form your character, form your soul. And so the people that you live with have a tremendous effect on you, one way or another. Now, Screwtape begins the letter by talking about self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is a really good thing, but Screwtape just wants the patient to see the expurgated, the photoshopped version of himself. That if he spends some time doing an examination of conscience, he misses all of the obvious things. When I read that, it put me in mind of the part of ourselves that we project typically onto social media. You know, the who we are on Instagram. It's all of the blemishes are cleared away and forgotten. Only the good things are put up. And in the same way, he wants the man, when he considers himself, to just be completely blind to all of his flaws and failings. And the character that springs to my mind is Eustace Scrubb. Last season when we spoke about the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, remember that we said that he was an avid journal keeper. But despite this, the boy had very little self-awareness and self-knowledge. Basically, Screwtape had done his work with Eustace Clarence Scrubb. But just one last thing on that point of self-knowledge and self-delusion. When we read Screwtape, we might think that it's just kind of ridiculous, that nobody would ever really be able to spend that much time in self-examination and miss everything that needed to be addressed. But I don't think it's that extraordinary. Each month I go to confession and I do an examination of conscience. And I will admit, there are times when I'm doing an examination of conscience and I'm just coming up blank. You know, I've just concluded, you know what, I have been amazing this month. I haven't sinned at all. But the thing is, I know that's not true. I know I'm just really good at deluding myself and forgetting where my faults and failures lie. And something I've suggested on this podcast before is that if you want to do an examination of conscience, go through 1 Corinthians 13, where it says love is patient, love is kind, and just put your own name in the place of love. And as you're trying to read that, it will usually bring to mind the moments when you haven't been patient, when you haven't been kind, when you haven't been loving. And also, here, this is where community can be really useful, really important. This entire letter is about how to use the patient's mother, the woman that he lives with, to lead him to hell. Well, there's an untwisting of that, which is that person could be leading him to heaven, because the people that are close to us, our parents, our siblings, our spouses, they know us really well. And if you have a good relationship with them, they can, hopefully lovingly, point out where it is that you need to you need to work a little bit harder at the path of holiness that you're trying to pursue. Another one of Screwtape's strategies, which we're going to see throughout this book, is getting the patient to think he's more advanced than he really is. Screwtape writes, keep his mind off the most elementary duties by directing him to the most advanced and spiritual ones. Screwtape is basically tricking the patient by making him think he's more advanced than he is, nurturing his pride and getting him to miss the basics, miss the fundamentals. Anyone that does sport knows that you keep drilling the fundamentals because those are the things that you need in order to be able to do the more advanced things. And when you keep trying to do the more advanced things, your fundamentals get rusty. And I think the scripture passage that springs to mind here is from James, the epistle, chapter 1, verse 27, where James defines pure and undefiled religion. And for James, it's very simple. It's to care for widows and orphans and to keep oneself unstained by the world. This isn't having visions and being swept up to the third heavens and all that kind of stuff. It's very basic. It's very grounded. And that Screwtape doesn't want that. He doesn't want things that are grounded, and particularly things that are grounded in action, which is another idea that we'll see develop over the coming weeks. My favourite thing that was said during today's episode was a comment that Andrew made when he was talking about Screwtape says that we all have these little looks and comments that we have that can drive the people that we're living with absolutely crazy. And Andrew suggested, well, if that's the case, then again, untwisting it, surely our little looks and our little comments can really build people up rather than driving them crazy. And so we don't do this too often, but if you want a challenge for this week, look to try and give a little comment. But rather than tearing somebody down or doing something that will irritate them, have it lift them up. I know I'm particularly terrible at all of these things. I just go into my own little world and I have no idea, sometimes the looks that I have on my face. But as Andrew says, these things can build up as well as tear down. And the last point I wanted to say about this letter was the attitude that Screwtape wants to foster in the patient and his mother. And it's one of always thinking the worst of the other. This double standard to always demand that your words are just taken at face value, but that the other person's words are taken in the worst possible light. And I can't help but think of Facebook and the upcoming election. Do we take people's words at face value, or do we give them the worst possible motives? Because we would like our own words to be taken at face value. And do we do that for other people? But those were really the thoughts that I had. I thought it was a great episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was also of some use. And we'll see you next week when we'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.